Okay, so the first thing that you're always going to do in terms of approaching a question is that you guys are actually going to label the dominant trait, the dominant trait with a big letter, and then the recessive trait with a small letter. Okay, so let's say we're just going to look at the basic look of our tall plant and our short plant. Okay, so far so good. Okay, so let's say we're going to take a pure tall, okay, and now you guys are going to know this as a pure, a homozygous dominant, and then a homozygous recessive, okay? So a pure tall is going to be crossed with a pure short, okay? So we're going to do Mendel's very initial experiment, okay? So if we ever look at the parent genotypes, okay, genotype just simply means what the actual combination of those alleles are. So whenever we look at the parental genotypes here, big T is for our tall parent times little t for our short parent. Okay? Hmm? Were you chewing on your pen? Yeah, I always. You probably don't want to borrow pens from me. That's how I make sure I mark my territory. Okay, so this is going to be our P1 cross. Okay? So that's the first thing that happens, okay? So, in a sense, the way that we think of this, and the reason why these occur in pairs, is that currently these parents are kind of like diploid organisms, okay? So, when their gametes actually get split up, what's going to happen to that 2N state? It's going to go from diploid to haploid, okay? So this is what happens next. So, one of the steps of drawing out these Punnett squares is understanding how these gametes are actually going to get produced. So, in the tall plant, whether it's a male or female or whatever, okay, plants don't really, well, they're both, okay? The gametes that are actually going to get produced are just big T and big T, okay? So if you take that diploid organism and you half that amount of DNA, the alleles are actually going to split themselves up into like one set each, okay? And that's what makes it kind of haploid. So in every single gamete, okay, it's not going to be too genetically variable, okay? But otherwise, all the gametes of that tall plant, because it's pure, it's actually going to produce just big T's in each of its egg cells or each of its sperm cells, okay? Now the same thing is going to happen for our short pure plant. Its gametes are going to split up into haploid cells, okay, so whether it's sperm or eggs or whatever, okay, basically that diploid organism is going to go to haploid once it undergoes meiosis. So these are the gametes that get produced because of these genotypes. Sound good? Okay, so this is how you work out a Punnett square. So it's kind of like a math square, okay, so on one side, you can put whichever parent you want, okay? But you're going to split up those genes in a particular way. So I'm going to take the big plant, the tall plant, and I'm going to leave its gametes in each of these spots, okay? Then on the other side, you're also going to put the other parent's gametes. So little t and little t. Okay, so you guys actually would show that there's like the big T and the big T on one side. Oh, it's exactly what you guys should have had anyways. Okay, so like a math square. Okay, when you multiply things out in a math square, this is what gets together. A big T and a little t. Okay, so you just combine the two as if you're kind of multiplying them out. So this gamete and this gamete, if this fertilization occurred, you're going to get a big T and a little t zygote baby. Okay, now the other thing too, please, and put this off to the side, list the dominant trait first always. Okay, it drives me nuts when I see people with like the recessive trait and then they take that as being like the actual phenotype afterwards. Okay, so list the dominant trait allele first, always. Okay, then this one, big T times little t is going to give us a big T little t person, baby. Okay, this parent and this parent, when these guys get together, big T and little t are also going to be found. So what ends up happening is that these are our 4 possible babies that can be made in this Punnett square. Okay? So let's talk about ratios. Okay? So if I were to ask you, what's the genotype of the F1 generation? Okay, so what does F stand for again? Filial, okay? So the genotype of the F1 generation is going to tell us that all of these are big T, little t, okay? So this is what you would mark down as kind of like your description of the genotypes that got produced. We're only interested in the genes that got together, okay? Now, questions that always get asked as well, describe what the phenotype of the F1 generation is. So the phenotype is the physical attribute that gets formed because of those genes. So every single one of these organisms is that they are all tall pea plants.